I don't believe that leadership is a position.
What does great leadership look like in your mind?
I actually think you can be a leader without any direct report. Leadership is a behaviour, and it's about how you can inspire other people, whether they report into you or not.
Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Distillery, where we have partnered with the Marketing Academy to explore the unfiltered selves of some of the most brilliant minds across marketing, advertising and media. I am delighted to be joined by Fern Canning. Fern is the current Marketing Director at Deloitte Consulting, but Fern has formerly been the Managing Director and EVP at Edelman. For those that don't know, Edelman is the world's largest PR and marcoms firm, but you've also held a raft of senior executive roles across marketing, PR, comms, creative, strategy, fundamentally telling the stories of some of the world's largest global brands and connecting them with their customers. You are also an executive advisor for the UN Development Program. So a very stacked agenda, but thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to come and have a chat.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
But that, as we say on this series, is the A side. What I would love to start with is a bit about you and a bit about the B side to that story.
All right. How far do you want me to go back?
Wherever you want to start.
The B side. What drove me? Let's start there. So I grew up with a really amazing family, actually. I was really lucky.
Awesome.
Yeah, yay. Yay me. Really great family, and mum and dad worked hard, and then they started their own business, and they started it in our front room. And I remember them taking over that study area. And they grew it. They got their own big office. I remember having to go there after school because, their working hours didn't really fit in with school time, being business owners. And things happened in their life, in their business, and the business was no longer. And that's their story to tell, not mine. But that has always instilled in me, and everything that came after that, such a huge work ethic. Like seeing my dad and my mum build that together, but then seeing my dad's work ethic after the business went. He worked multiple jobs. He used his skills in so many different places. And just kept going. Incredible human. And that really has driven my work ethic. And I think when you see somebody start a business, run a business, dig in, be resilient, bounce back constantly, it's no cakewalk running a business. It's really hard and it's really gritty. So I have such huge respect for anyone that does that. But that has definitely driven me. And from a very young age, I took that tenacity, and I just kept applying for all these little, we call them internships now, it's work experience back in the day. And, my poor dad, he's working all these jobs, and he had to drive me here and there and everywhere every time I picked up a bit of work experience during the school holidays. And then I came across this agency, and it was the top agency of the time in London, marketing, creative, and I just knew I wanted to work there. And back in the day, and everyone was like, oh, she's so old. But I went into the library, there's a big book, it used to be called Hollis, big book. And you would literally flick through and it would list all the agencies and all their clients. And that's how I found this firm. And I was like, I really want to work there. So I remember the HR lady was called Sally. And I just kept on prodding her. And she said, we do not accept anybody who isn't an undergraduate. Fine. So I kept kept trying. And then I got into a degree in Bournemouth Uni, specialist degree. It's only the second one in the country, I think, around public relations and CSR and marketing. And I sent her my acceptance and said, does this count? And she said, oh, come on then. So they gave me an internship before I started uni, which was amazing. Yeah, wow. And I carried on working with them every holiday. Did a year placement with them, led a pitch with them before I went back to uni, and had a job straight out of the bat from uni as well. And then it was, sometimes it is damn luck and sometimes it is your own tenacity. But I do think some of it was luck in, I'm sitting there as a grad employee in one of the biggest agencies in London at the time, and all the senior people above me left. So suddenly I was the most senior person as a grad on pretty big accounts, and we had some really big campaigns running, and so I just led.
Walked across the coals.
Just did it. And then we had, new people joining, and there's me as a grad, telling a director, I remember Piers, he was like, what do I do? And I was like, right, these are all the things that need to be done this week. That's your to-do list. You need to do this. And I just remember thinking, wow, I'm really doing this. And that was the start of a bit of a fire and passion, really, for the industry.
And you mentioned work ethic. And that's a big esoteric concept. What do you think are the ingredients of a great work ethic?
It's changed in me over the years, I have to say.
Where did it start and where is it now?
Okay, so it started, work was everything. So work became my life. I gave up a lot of my life hours for work. I ended up basically leaving a very big agency to start a firm, and I was only 22, 23 with my then boss, and we started this firm. We had a big client that came with us, and I gave it everything. I'd never take that back. It was the most incredible experience. It's still going strong. But work, I was work was me. And it did get to the point where it kind of irked me when I'd go out and see friends, and the first thing they'd say is, how's work? And that's because I didn't really have anything else going on. I gave everything to work. And I think over the years, I realised that you've got to have a sense of self outside of work. And actually great leadership, and I'm sure we'll dig into this, but great leadership isn't about being always on. It's not about the glorification of busy. It's not about giving up everything from your life to work. There's the whole put your mask on before you help others, and I've definitely come to realize that's really important, is to take what you need, because if you don't, you can't keep going.
I love that in answering what do you think great work ethic's about, you've spoken about the whole of self. I think that there's some real wisdom there. You spoke a lot about grit and tenacity, and I'd love to just understand the role that's played, and for those that are looking, at your illustrious career and wanting to emulate or aspire to be a senior leader, how that's played a role in getting where you've gotten.
I don't think I've had to display anywhere near the grit and tenacity that a business founder has had to, or any other SMB or owner or founder. But what I will say is, it is the tough times. It's when you work in this career, sometimes you are on top of the world, and your campaigns are looking incredible. You've nailed the creative. It's bang on strategy. It's out the door. Everyone's applauding you. You're winning awards, and it's absolutely fantastic, and that's great. And you bask in that glory, but that isn't actually what grows you. It's actually the really hard times. And one of my old bosses, Serena, she was the first one that said to me, and I've passed that wisdom on, is when it's really hard, when things are not going well, when, I've had to deal with legal teams for big A-listers and, big ad budgets being pulled and, campaigns really almost falling off of a cliff, which you can imagine clients are really thrilled about. And all the pressure that comes with that, that's what makes you. Being able to deal with that, and just experiencing it. Sometimes it's really hard to deal with it, and sometimes you do not have all the answers, and neither does your boss, actually. And when you become that, leader, for want of a better term, you don't have all the answers. And so I think in terms of grit and determination, it's actually about getting out the other side and looking back and saying, right, what just happened? How did I deal with it? What did I learn? How can I make it better next time? And I think that same kind of pay it forward journey applies when you have teams and you lead teams and you create that experience that it's okay when things go wrong, because you can say, hey, back in the day, this happened to me and I came out it better. I learned more. I became stronger, and I'm better at what I do because I've had the lived experience. And I think that's really important. Do you have
a reflective process that you go through that builds that muscle?
I do. I have to say I didn't. I definitely didn't. I was just like, go. But it was part of Marketing Academy, made me reflect back on my journey and even the importance of taking that time to reflect. And I had incredible mentors through Marketing Academy, and a common theme from them, and it was probably part of the questions that I was asking them in terms of how do you deal with this, cycle of go, 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 is that they always said, they block time in their diaries for thinking, they block time in their diaries for reflection, whether that was weekly or quarterly or, bookending a month, and actually saying, did I show up well? Am I living my passion? How could I have done that better? What didn't I like about myself that day, that week? So I do, it's actually doing the hard work. It's not comfortable to sit there and reflect and think about when you were great, but when you could have been better.
Yeah, and I think it's even harder to slow down to speed up, and, knowing that looking at that time is not wasted. You touched on mentorship. I'd love to understand the role that has played in your career, and then a build on that for those, again, looking at this conversation and not really knowing what the first step looks like in building that bench of great advisors and a safety net, so to speak, how you went about it and how they might.
Yeah. I think there's so many very formalized mentorship programs. So I like the word you just used in terms of advisor. And I think I have been so fortunate to have worked with people who have really inspired me and continued to, be a part of their orbit because they're so inspirational. You don't check out just because you leave that firm, you keep in touch. And, the first one that comes to mind is when I did start the firm and manage an entirely new firm at the very tender age of 22. That was, a leader who looked at me and said, let's do it. And she said, the clients approached you, they've approached me. Let's start a company. Let's build it with them as our first client. Now, somebody having that complete faith in your abilities and trust in your abilities speaks volumes, and I'm always indebted to Collie for that, and we're still in touch today. I'll seek her advice about when I move to Australia, is it the right thing? And, when I'm looking at new jobs, what do you think? And I've got some of those people in my life back from the UK who are very much a part of my advisory network, and I trust their counsel. And then the more formalized mentorship through Marketing Academy. Again, I was quite proactive, let's say, in having a look at who all of the mentors were. So you do get matched with different mentors, and I kind of knew who I was most interested in talking to, depending on where I was in my career and what they were doing. And so I was quite deliberate in saying, hey, I'd actually like these people to be my mentors because of where they are and what I'm about to embark on, which was a regional leadership role, not just an Australia role. I was already doing a global role, and how on earth do you make that work? And so I was quite deliberate in that. But I think in terms of advice, being deliberate and seeking the right mentor and owning that relationship is really important. It's really important to do your research about the person. You can't just say, oh, they're a leader and they work for a brand that I think is really interesting or that I want to work with, which seems to be the go. It has to be, what have they done throughout their career? How did they get there? What is it that you're looking to do that they can give you advice on? It is actually supposed to be a bit more of a transformational journey. And actually, for me, a friendship, has grown through the mentors that I have in my life and the people that I mentor. And I think you have to go into it with that frame of mind and complete respect for the person that's giving their time. So do the research, be gentle in the approach. They might have been approached so many times and simply can't give the time right then, but maybe they can in the future. And if you are lucky enough for them to say yes, you do have to drive that forward. You do have to preempt when you're going to meet, for how long, what works best for them, and almost pre-plan what you want to talk about and give them that heads up so they can do a little bit of thinking themselves, because we're not all robots. It's a transformational thing, and it is a two-way conversation. So oftentimes, when I'm mentoring, I get something out of that personally. I learn from what they're asking me, and I think that's really important. I think as well, it's important to recognize when a mentorship isn't working and just call it.
And what are the lead indicators for that? I think that's a really important call out.
It's an individual thing, I believe. My best mentorships are when a mentor isn't telling me the answer. That's not really what I want. You know,
You want a coaching experience.
I do, yeah. And you know, the best mentors ask questions. You know, they ask questions and help you get to where you already know, you know, but they eke it out of you and they sit alongside you on that journey. And that's what works for me. But depending on why somebody wants a mentor, you know, they might actually want someone to just tell them what to do next.
That's really great, and I think very specific guidance. I really like that response, and I think for those that are listening in, I think it's a great set of rules for engagement for those looking to shape that path. You mentioned something earlier when we were chatting around, you know, that's not what great leadership looks like. What does great leadership look like in your mind?
We've worked for leaders who, you know, that you don't want to be that leader in the future. And we've worked for people who you go, yeah, that's what great leadership looks like. But before I go there, I do want to say I don't believe that leadership is a position at all. I don't. Yep. I think, unfortunately, when we hear the term leader or leadership, we immediately, I mean, I do, I'm speaking for everyone in the world, we immediately think of a pyramid. We think of a hierarchy, or we think of an org chart,
pointy end,
reporting lines. Yeah, who's at the top? That's not leadership. I actually think you can be a leader without any direct reports. I think leadership is a behavior, and it's about how you can inspire other people, whether they report into you or not, whether you even work with them or not. You know, that's great leadership. Is, can you nurture people? Can you inspire them? Do you role model the right behaviors in being inclusive and safe and wanting to encourage people to kind of do things themselves rather than the control side of leadership, which is actually management, not leadership, but that whole, you know, command and control. That's, to me, that's really poor leadership.
Other side of the coin. What are some of the myths or the truisms that we think is great leadership that often is just baggage that slows us down?
I think, well, first of all, it's back to that pointy end in the hierarchy that a leader is the person in control. Mm-hmm. They're not. It's just a person in control. It's often a manager.
but as a leader, if I'm, you know, where might I misstep in terms of I think this is, you know, this is what good leadership's going to look like.
Right. Well, I have misstepped as a leader. So let me give
Let's
you an
start
example. There. It's pretty mortifying, actually. So I remember a director I was working with, and I just couldn't get her to share her work. I think it was a pitch. I can't remember what it was about, but I just, you know, when someone's like, no, look over there. I'm like, what's going on? You know, why am I not able to see this? Why isn't she engaging with me? And we eventually had a bit of a heart-to-heart, and she cried, and I was just mortified. And she said that I'd set the standard so high that she was almost frozen in fear and didn't want to show me the work because it wouldn't ever be good enough. And that was like, you know, it was like a punch in the gut. And it was a real wake-up call for me that you can have complete honesty, which is how I like to be, you know, very much bring my whole self to work rather than two different personas. And you can, you know, you can be honest, you can be transparent, you can set the tone, you can think that you're pulling everyone along and driving everyone to be their best. Doesn't work for everyone, and you have to do that with a lot of empathy. And I was not reading the room. I wasn't reading the signals. And I think that is, you know, a moment of reflection for me, and something I definitely learned from, that I should have seen that pulling away a lot earlier. And, you know, another really important part of being a leader is not just listening, making people feel heard, but looking at their cues as well. You know, are they sending emails really late at night? Are they kind of disappearing and not, or coming to meetings late, or leaving early and not speaking up? And, you know, that's actually not creating a great safe space. Yeah. And that's exactly what we should be doing as leaders. So yeah, that was something that really woke me up.
How do you create a safe space? What's your principles for psychological safety? Because I think that's an incredibly important component to team dynamics and creating a team that flourishes.
It is. It is, and I think it's so multidimensional, and there isn't, unfortunately, it's not a list, right? Because it depends on the individuals, and I think that's the first part of how you approach it, is recognizing that, you know, you can call them a team, but it's made up of individuals.
Yeah, a rich tapestry of humans.
Yeah, right. And you've got to get to know them, understand them, look for the cues. Like I say, look for the body language, look for when things maybe aren't quite right with them, and recognize that. That's a really important part of that psychological wellness, and it's such an important environment to create for everybody. I think, sorry, go on, you're going to say something.
But what happens, it's because I think it's a beautiful idea, but what happens when your Eden and my Eden are at odds with one another, but we're within the same?
I've coached 2 people through this before. Communicate, like, it's so ridiculous, but communication is so important. And I think I'm hearing someone's voice in my head. It's probably Oscar Trimboli. But the point is that we all have these ways that we like to be heard, but we don't tell anyone that. Okay, so we're just expecting others to know what we want and to know how to communicate with us and to know how we feel. Again, it's about doing the hard work. Sometimes, I've had to put my hand up and say I did not appear at my best in that situation. I remember being so frustrated with a team that I was working with in how they'd shown up, and I did not express that frustration well at all. And I put my hand up and said that wasn't okay. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I shouldn't have behaved like that. I'm going to be better. And I know that wasn't okay. Let's talk about it. But I also think sharing anecdote, being human, that's it. It's about saying, like, I'm doing the best I can. I'm only human. We're all learning as we go along.
Yeah, it's amazing what a bit of humility can do in terms of disarming.
And to that point, actually, it wasn't combative, but it was another big wake-up call for me. We lost this pitch, right? It was a big pitch. We were really in on it, and I was highly emotionally involved because I'd become really good friends with the client. We're still good friends. And she called me to say, you didn't win the pitch. She was crying down the phone because we didn't win the pitch. I started crying. I was like, okay, got to pull it together and go tell that team that all this hard work and all their love, they loved this brand. They were so proud of their work, not just the pitch, but the work we'd been doing with them over the past few years.
Yeah.
It was like they were part of the brand. And I had to go and tell them. And I tried to keep it together. I tried to do that, real professional. So guys, it's not great news, and these are the reasons why. And I started crying. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm absolutely mauled. I'm so sorry. I'm crying. This is terrible. And I remember my ECD saying, oh my God, she's human. And that was another wake-up call for me. I'm like, hang on a minute. I say that I bring my whole self to work, that I am who I am. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't have, a persona and a true character. But clearly, I wasn't doing that all of the time. And again, it's listening to those moments and recognizing them and reflecting on them that make you change. And
I find it ends up being having a real galvanizing effect on the team, right?
Yeah.
Because you become one of them.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Last question from me. And I mean, I could sit here and chat to you for hours. If you went back 15 years, knowing what you know now, knowing the pitfalls, the stings in the tail that have bitten you in the behind, those times where you might have fallen off the tightrope but then picked yourself back up. If you could go back and have a chat to Fern 15 years ago and give yourself a few pieces of sage wisdom to set you up for even more success than the success you've already earned, what would that be?
The first one goes against the grain a little bit.
Okay, we love that.
Okay. The first one is put the phone down and look up and be with your friends. Because I missed weddings. I was at, friends had cooked beautiful dinners and I was on my phone sending emails late at night and not appreciating their company at all. That's pretty embarrassing and really poor behavior to look back on because of work. And so number one is we talk about work-life balance, and we talk about work-life blend. Forget that. Have your boundaries. That's what I would have told myself 15 years ago. Set your boundaries. No one else is going to set them for you. You want to work all night. Everyone's going to be like, great.
Yeah, 10 years from now, no one's going to remember you worked all those late nights, but your friends and your kids.
I think, get your priorities straight would be my first advice. Okay. First piece of advice. Secondly, it would be watch for the signals, watch for the cues. You don't have to be a leader to do that. You should look across the board at the people you work with, shoulder to shoulder, forget the hierarchy, get to know each other on a real individual human level, what makes people tick, what's happening in their personal lives. Be honest and be open with them so that they can be honest and open with you and build a bit more of a trusted circle of relationships rather than a hierarchy where you work. I think that's really critical, because you've got to look out for each other. You've got to have a team spirit where you know when to step in and support each other because they need to step back, because life happens, shit happens, and it happens whilst we're trying to work, you know? And there's no point bringing the hierarchy and the ego and all of that stuff into the room when we're just human beings.
I love that. Thank you for that. I think that is sage wisdom.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to have a chat.
Thanks, Dan.